And I would like to go back to, in your mind, to yesterday's session and speech by ITU's director, who spoke about digital transformation, which is another good introduction to our panel discussion. So, ladies and gentlemen, I was wondering what I should start with in terms of e-health. And I went back to the beginning of the digital transformation in my mind. In 1996, Gary Hammer spoke about the end of incrementalism. At this time, we have seen the end of an era that certain important changes could be changed incrementally. We have a new era after a certain breakthrough disruption where new business models superseded the old models, and whoever failed to see it, they were left out of the mainstream. And we could talk about the icons of 20th century economy that did not notice certain important changes. For example, Kodak, a huge company also built on a great technological change in the 19th century, which is not part of the digital transformation today. Another company in Europe, for example, Nokia. It was the foundation of a digital transformation. Where is it today? These examples provide a context for the topic. And we can also see this in the context of e-health, where digital transformation is a tool for the transformation of health system. It's not only an addition to the existing health system, because as such it wouldn't get us the real benefits. It offers an opportunity to fundamentally transform the system. Now, please put on a short video from Mrs. Martin, who spoke about digital transformation. Okay, can you move back a little bit? She talked about the digital transformation in the post-digital era. She said that we are now in a post-digital era. She talked about innovation, technologies that are already there, and she talked about three pillars: innovation, implementation, and impact or outcome. And today, in a post-digital era, it's not those technologies that enable advantages, but the ability to implement and a focus on effects on outcome.
Of the Regional Economic Forum. In the
Bardzo przepraszamy, ale nie słyszymy filmu w kabinie, dlatego też nie możemy zapewnić Państwu tłumaczenia. Przepraszamy za niedogodność.
I also want to make the case for why they matter, not just to those of us here in Europe, but why they matter to every country everywhere. The past 2 decades have seen seismic shifts in the digital landscape. Mobile has overtaken fixed.
Weź ich zawołaj, może nam włączą to na słuchawki.
Content platforms have overtaken telcos in user base, revenues, and reach. Telcos themselves have morphed into broadcasters, booking agencies, boutiques, banks. Digital technologies have disrupted all business models, creating opportunities for all kinds of innovation. And yet the digital transformation of our world is still in its infancy. If the past few years have been dominated by 4 technologies we collectively know as SNAP, SMAC, social, mobile, analytics, and cloud, the coming years promise an even more profound redrawing of the battle lines. Welcome to the post-digital age. SMAC technologies are now seamlessly integrated into our everyday environment. They are no longer the key drivers of disruption. Instead, a new raft of emerging technologies are once again rewriting the rules and redefining the intersection between people and technology. What are the technologies and the trends that define this first post-digital decade? To frame our thinking, let's break this into three categories: innovation, implementation, and impact. Let's start with innovative technologies. The first is clearly 5G. The speed, capacity, and low latency of these ultra-fast networks will serve as the base from which we push forward the frontiers of next-generation digital transformation. 5G networks are already up and running in several countries, and within 15 years, 5G could account for half of all mobile subscriptions. The Internet of Things is one area that will get a huge boost from 5G. Analysts predict over 75 billion connected devices within the next 5 years, as early applications in retail and logistics are overtaken by a profusion of increasingly sophisticated applications across a huge range of industries. Looking further ahead, analysts point to 4 core transformative technologies that are starting to gain market traction: distributed ledger systems, artificial intelligence, extended reality, and quantum computing. And to those 4, I think we can also add robotics, which is moving from the warehouse and factory floor into our everyday world. So much for the innovations. Now let's talk about the implementation. What will these technologies mean for the way that we live and the way that we work? The central critical role technology plays in people's lives means today's customers are getting much more demanding about how technology works for them. Trust, transparency, and accountability are becoming paramount. So is giving people agency and control over the systems they interact with. Which brings me to our third pillar, impact. For the tech industry, leveraging the power of digital transformation will mean moving to a much more collaborative, people-centric model. It will mean respecting customers' deep reliance on technology, respecting their expectations around privacy, respecting their desire to exercise a degree of control, and understanding that every product and service is now part of a much larger personal digital ecosystem and needs to interact smoothly with other platforms and devices if it is to add value to people's lives. Distinguished colleagues, the past 20 years have been nothing short of extraordinary. But in some quarters, there is a growing sense that digital advances have put people in the service of technology. In the next 20 years, we need to be all about making technology work for people. Nowhere is that more true than in the developing world, where digital transformation could have its most powerful effect. We have just 10 years left to achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals. As we embark on this decade of action, digital technologies represent the catalyst that we so badly need to accelerate progress. Perhaps we think that the world's poorer nations could never be at the cutting edge of technological advances. And yet many of the emerging technologies I mentioned could have their most compelling applications in the developing world. Just a few examples. AI is ushering in dramatic advances in natural language processing. Those advances would allow handheld devices to support voice-based interfaces and dozens of local languages. The plummeting cost of IoT for agriculture and energy management is making it a very viable option for many poorer countries. Mobile money is helping empower traditionally marginalized groups, such as low-income women. Digital platforms are connecting people to job opportunities and teleworking platforms that enable them to earn a living even if their home is in a remote village. Digital classroom assistants and educational games could bring the deeply transformative power of education to the estimated 225 million children still out of school. Put simply, there will be no SDGs without ICTs. And that's why my organization is working hard with our partners from 193 member states and 800 private sector members. We're working hard to connect the 3.6 billion people still offline. It's not something any one player can do alone. 10 years ago, ITU partnered with UNESCO to launch the Broadband Commission, a cross-sectoral think tank and advocacy body comprising over 50 leaders from government, industry, the regulatory community, and civil society. In its multi-stakeholder approach and holistic view of the socially transformational power of broadband, the Commission exemplifies the collaborative spirit that defines our new post-digital era.
Dziękuję bardzo. Pozwoliłem sobie przywołać tą wypowiedź, która otworzyła.
Thank you very much. I took the liberty to replay this statement that opened our economic forum, as it clearly states that makes technology work for people. We started with broadband. It was my personal business adventure in 2000. And at that time, we were thinking how that was going to affect our everyday lives and what the key use cases would be. Now we are talking about 5G, which in fact is again going to transform our lives, our work, the processes, business processes. Now, the 4 dimensions of e-health challenges. First one is infrastructure. Systems for exchange of medical records, privacy, cybersecurity are playing an increasing role in our infrastructural world. But infrastructure is not all. We have certain solutions. For instance, AI, big data, wearables, blockchain technologies, augmented reality, virtual reality technologies, robotics in everyday life. That's a level of solutions that are coming up, more and more of them. Now, this is the stage of innovations, but we need to shift to the stage of implementation and impact, and we need to have the right environment for that. That environment consists of a certain institutional governance that must be mature enough to provide value to users, to patients. We need a certain organizational culture focused on outcomes, not only on activity. We need competences in terms of healthcare. Of the essence are ethical questions, whether or not we discriminate certain groups. These are 3 dimensions. A 4th dimension consists of use cases. Why are we doing this? A 4th challenge is to properly define the right use cases where we can use those technologies to obtain benefits. So obviously we can use it in the case of senior health care, chronic diseases prevention. So from reparative medicine we can shift to preventive medicine, maintaining good health, automation. more and more processes, healthcare processes, can be automated. Today, it doesn't seem likely, perhaps we don't even expect it, but in 10 years' time, we will probably wonder how it's possible that those processes were not automated before. In Japan, for example, healthcare robotics, robotization is a fact already. At the end, I would like us to talk about a specific use case that is important today. We have a certain crisis situation, and I would like to perhaps provocatively tell you something. If e-health is to help us, it should help us right now in this crisis. If it doesn't, why should we bother with it? So this potential should emerge today, and I hope we can talk about this during the panel discussion.